Good evening from Vietnam. Good morning to you, John. Thanks a lot for spending your morning to join our show and share your stories, the very inspiring stories to our audience. And on behalf of the listeners around the world, I want to say thank you.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm honored.
Okay. John, you haven't been to my country, so please accept this as our formal invitation. So if you decided to travel here with your families, you let us know. We would be so happy to stay around and take you guys to show how beautiful our country is.
Well, that's a wonderful offer. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And for a little taste of our culture, it is very honor for our audience to have a little introduction about who you are and the work that you do by yourself. Can you do that honor for us?
Sure. So my name's John Tarantino, and I live in the United States. I live in the smallest state in the United States called Rhode Island. I live in the capital city, Providence. For more than almost 44 years, I have been an attorney, and for most of the time, that has been my only career, an attorney. In the last 3 years, I have changed. I still am an attorney. I still have my law license. I still practice law, but I have gone into two other areas that I spend a lot of my time on. The first is I'm what's called the managing trustee. It's like the CEO or the executive director of a very large foundation here in Rhode Island called the Pepito Opportunity Connection. And the purpose of that foundation is to help to transform lives and improve lives in underprivileged communities. People in our state, and there are many, not only in our state, but in our country, in the world, who need help. They need help, they need training, they need financial literacy, they need education, criminal justice, civil justice, entrepreneurship. And the foundation that I run gives grants to many organizations to help them reach those goals. So that's one of the things that I do. And then the second thing that I do is that I'm the actual CEO, the chief officer of a company called Iylon, Iylon Precision Oncology, LLC. Now, I am not a doctor, and I'm not an oncologist, and you may think, well, how did you come to be the CEO of a global oncology company? Unfortunately, I learned a lot about oncology and a lot about cancer because 4 years ago, my wife of almost 45 years was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And although there have been some improvements since her diagnosis in 2021, at the time that she was diagnosed, there was a 0 survival rate for stage 4 pancreatic cancer, 0. What my wife and I wanted to do was to make as good use of whatever time God gave her left, whether it was a day, a week, a month, or a year. We were not going to just give in to cancer, and we were going to do everything that we could to prolong her life and make it as happy as possible. And I began learning as much as I could that was possible about cancer, not only the kind of cancer that she had, but all kinds of cancer. As a lawyer, I handled many, many different kinds of cases and had to learn substantively about many different areas of the law and many different businesses, sciences. And I really engaged to try to learn as much as I could, because I felt I could be my wife's best advocate the more I learned about cancer. As I said, stage 4 pancreatic cancer, at the time she was diagnosed, was unfortunately a death sentence. There was no chance of survival. It was just a question of how long she would live, and she lived about 11 months. And what we did was, in her last days, we came together as a couple, as we always made decisions as a couple. And my wife said to me, I need you to consider doing me 2 favors. And I said, her name was Pat. I said, Pat, I will do anything you want, anything. And we had a beautiful, beautiful home that we lived in for about 33 years. Very large home. We raised our family there. It was a wonderful, beautiful place. And my wife asked me whether I was going to continue to live in the home after she passed away. I was honest with her, and I told her that I couldn't do it. First of all, it would only be me, because all of our children, have grown and they live in different parts of the country. And I didn't want to live by myself in a large home, but also it would be very difficult to live in that home with all of the memories and the difficulties that we had gone through in the last 11 months. And so I was honest, and I said, I'm not going to live in the home. And she said, that doesn't surprise me. Would you consider selling the home, but donating all of the proceeds to cancer research? Since you're not going to live there, we don't need the money. We didn't need the money. I had a very successful career. And I said, Pat, if that's what you want, I obviously will talk to my children. I want them to know about it. They were very supportive of it. They thought it would be, a beautiful gift to give. And so we did. We gave all the proceeds of the sale of the home for cancer research, so that others wouldn't have to suffer the way that she did, hopefully to improve research and patient care. What was the second favor she asked? The second favor she asked was that I also donate the proceeds of all of the life insurance policies that she had. When we were young, when our children were young, we both had insurance policies, so that if I passed away, she would be able to care for the children. And if she passed away, I would be able to, have someone help me to help raise the children while I worked. So we always kept those policies in place. They were very substantial, millions of dollars. And she said, would you do the same thing? Would you give the proceeds of the insurance policies to cancer research? And again, I said, I would do that. And that was a lot of money between the home and the insurance policies. But I also knew it wasn't going to be enough money to really make a difference. And so I decided that I would form my own foundation, the John and Pat Tarantino Charitable Foundation, to help raise money, to help with cancer research, and also to help people who can't afford the copays. It's very expensive, even if you have good insurance, if you're undergoing cancer treatment. And so I did, and that's a way for me to remember my wife every day and honor her memory and establish a legacy for her. And I began talking about what I had done, and the founder of Iylon Precision Oncology heard me and learned my story and heard my story and watched my first TEDx called Redemption Stories. And he said, I want you to join Iylon as the CEO. And I said, his name is Dr. Mani, Sundari Mani. And I said, Dr. Mani, I'm not a doctor. I'm not an oncologist. He said, we have many doctors and many oncologists. We need somebody like you to lead us and guide us. And we can practice what we do, our research and our medicine, but we need a leader of our organization. You know a lot about cancer. You know how to lead people. You know how to lead organizations. I was the president of my firm for 27 years. And so he was in, at that time, Houston, Texas, at MD Anderson. And I said, I will agree to do it if you move to Rhode Island. Move your company to Rhode Island. I thought he would say no. He said yes.
Wow.
And so he and his family are here now. We run Iylon, which is a global company from Providence, Rhode Island, and he has become one of my best friends.
Dr. Mani.
M-A-N-I, Dr. Mani, Sundari Mani.
Wow. John, I think your TED Talk has taken a lot of people tears, okay? And it's very tough, very, very touching for a lot of us, me included. And my wife, I think she cried a lot after listening to that TED Talk that I shared to her. And this conversation is, we want to use it in a way to honor Pat and the relationship and make her legacy even spread further, okay? And the way for us to do that, John, I like to travel time with you at different point in time in your life, okay? So how does time travel, how does that sound to you?
It sounds great.
Alrighty. So I grew up in a very poor community in central Vietnam. So in our city called Da Nang City, so that is where, they had a lot of bombs in the areas during the wars, right? Not just one war, two wars in here. And when I was born, so I grew up, one day we had electricity, and then maybe the next day we don't, or maybe the next 2 days we didn't have electricity. So the only thing that really, really made me exciting is when the moon arose, right? And then we can see things very bright. So my first dream when I was little was one day if I could become an astronaut and travel to the moon, see how bright it is up there. But life didn't give me any opportunity to pursue that dream, except one thing. During this 3.5 year journey, I've been able to interview the youngest man who ever walked on the moon, who ever, on the Apollo mission 16. And that's really beautiful. So for you, John, when you was little, what was your dream about the future work that John is going to do in the world?
Well, my first dream was to become a professional baseball player. That's what I wanted to do. I soon realized that I didn't know how to hit a curveball, at least not pitched by anyone who knew how to throw a curveball. I played sports, but I clearly wasn't good enough to play in the major leagues. And my mom knew I was disappointed, knew that it's something that I really wanted to do. And she said, God has given you many talents. Focus on the talents that God has given you. Have a good answer at the end of your life when God asks you, what have you done with the talents I gave you? And I decided that I would do that, not try to manufacture talents that I didn't have, but use the talents that he gave me. And he gave me a good mind, and he gave me a good spirit, and he gave me the ability to work hard. And I started watching a television show back then that was called Perry Mason. And Perry Mason was a lawyer, and he was a lawyer who defended people who had very, very difficult problems. And Perry Mason won all of his cases, always. Wow. And I said I wanted to be like Perry Mason. I wanted to be like him, that I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to help people. I thought I could speak well and argue well, and I had a good mind. And so I went back to my mom and said, I'm not going to be a professional baseball player. That won't work. but what do you think about being a lawyer? And she said, I think you'd be a good lawyer. And so I decided that that is something that I wanted to be. And I went through various journeys in my life of whether I actually would be able to be a lawyer or not be able to be a lawyer, because it was also very expensive to go to college and law school. And my parents came from very, very modest means. My mom and dad both left school. My mom was 14, my dad was 13, to go and work. But for them, education was really important for their children. And they stressed that we should do everything that we could to become well educated. And I was, very fortunate and very blessed to be able to go to an excellent college. I had to work, not only, on my classes, but work in order to pay for college. I was able to graduate in 3 years rather than 4 to save a year's tuition and room and board. And then I was done with college, but I had just a bachelor's degree. Now I had to figure out, how am I going to go to law school? How am I going to go to law school? And that was also going to be financially challenging. So I came back home from college, went to college in New Hampshire, Dartmouth College, and my mom said to me, the first thing that you have to do, John, if you want to become a lawyer, is you have to get a job now, earn some money, so you can afford to go to law school. And back in those days, there were actual newspapers that people read instead of reading everything online. And in the newspapers, in the back of the newspapers, were called the want ads, or employment opportunities. And I looked in the want ads, and many of them were for jobs that I didn't qualify for, because you needed this kind of experience or that kind of experience. But there was a job that said all you needed was to be a recent college graduate, have a bachelor's of arts or a bachelor's of science, and you could apply for this job. So I said, I'm going to apply for this job. And it didn't pay a lot of money, but it, paid enough that I thought if I could get this job and improve, maybe I could advance and make some more money and eventually go to law school. So I submitted my resume. You did it by mail then, snail mail. There were no computers. So I prepared a resume. I sent my resume in by mail, and I got an interview. And I learned that I was a finalist. There were 2 finalists for the job. I had to appear at a certain day and time for my finalist interview along with the other finalist. And I went to the business, and there was a beautiful young woman there who was also applying for the job. Her name was Pat.
Oh.
And so Pat, who I had never met, I didn't know, she and I applied for the same job. And it was a little bit uncomfortable when I realized that we were both there in the reception area by ourselves, knowing that we were both in need of a job and both applying for the same job. And so I decided that I would, sort of break the ice here. And I said, I introduced myself. I said, my name is John Tarantino. And she said her name was Pat McGovern. And I said, Pat McGovern, I'll make a deal with you. Whoever gets the job will take the other one out to dinner. How about that? And so she was very confident, and she said, where would you like me to take you to dinner? Because I'm getting the job. And so I said, not only is she beautiful, she's confident. We had our interviews, and as I like to say, I got the job and Pat got the husband, because we went on our date, our dinner date, and we hit it off. And a year later, to the exact day of our meeting, we got married.
Wow.
on June 24th, 1977, and she was my wife for almost 45 years.
Wow. Wow. So when she didn't get that job, but you won the job, what did she say to you?
She said, "I can't believe you got the job." but she said, "I made a deal with you. I will go out to dinner with you." And we went out to dinner and we just had a wonderful time, and we realized that we just liked each other a lot and we wanted to, continue having a relationship, and we fell in love and we were married. And Pat had a great career of her own. She became a teacher in many different respects. She taught in public school. She taught in parochial school, Catholic school. And she also, at a period of time, said, "I want to do something very different, John. I hope you will support me in it." And I said, "I'll support you in anything you want to do, Pat." And she said, I want to teach in the women's prison. She said, I believe that many young women end up in prison because they're uneducated. They get taken advantage of. They end up on the streets, prostitutes or drug problems. Many of them have young children that they can't care for. And if they get out of prison and they still don't have an education, they're going to just end up in trouble again. I want to go into the prison. I want to teach young women in the prison, and I want them to get their what are called GEDs or high school equivalency. It was an unpaid job. And she did that for many years.
Wow.
And then she decided that she wanted to do the same thing, but to do it for immigrants, people coming to the United States who wanted to learn English, wanted to learn basic financial literacy skills. And she also then volunteered for several years teaching at a social service agency, again, free of charge. So even though she never was paid for that work, I used to come home at the end of the week and we would talk about what we did for the week. And I always felt that Pat's stories of what she did always added much more to the family than what I did by bringing home a paycheck. Mm-hmm. So we had a wonderful life and a wonderful relationship.
Now I want to talk about her life then. Okay. For 45 years in married with Pat, and do you know where did she have, grow the hearts for other people like that so beautifully?
Pat's the most amazing person I've ever met in my life. In my first TED Talk, even when Pat was undergoing, her chemo and her surgeries, she continued to volunteer. She said, "I'm going to live my life with grace. I'm going to do everything that I can to, help my family and help others. I'm just not going to give up." And people would say to me, "Your wife is a saint, John. She's just a saint." And I said, I view her as a different kind of heavenly figure. I view her as an archangel warrior, the kind that has the blazing sword that fights evil. And Pat was passionate in her life. Whenever she saw something wrong, whenever she saw something that she perceived as evil, she would stand up to it. She would fight for what she believed in. She believed in the goodness of people. She believed that everyone should be given an opportunity. She believed in not only second chances, but third, fourth, and fifth chances. As long as people were sincere and wanted to improve, she would help them. And she influenced me like no other ever did, and I'm confident no other ever will.
How was she growing up? What kind of environment that she was in when she grew up?
So she was born in Long Island, New York, in a very small community. Her mom and dad were very philanthropic, not in the sense of money, but in the sense of devoting their time to church and charitable causes, and instilled in their two daughters. Pat has one sister. The need to give back, to accept and be thankful for all the blessings we have, and to give those back, and try to make everyone's lives better. Everyone who you touched, try to make their lives better. And she was just a regular, happy, healthy young girl, and then young woman. She did very well in college. And again, she wanted to give back, and she felt that one way of giving back was to teach young people, initially young people, and then, as I said, to teach incarcerated women. And then in the final chapter of her life, to teach immigrants coming to the United States. So I told you in the beginning, I want to have a good answer when God asks me at the end of my life, what have you done with the talents I gave you? I will guarantee you Pat has a tremendous answer when God asked her that question, because she used every single one of the talents he gave her to the maximum.
Wow. Wow. Is that okay if I bring you to the moment that figured out that Pat has the illness, and is that okay when we talk about that?
Yes, sure. So it was during the pandemic. All of our children lived away from us. We could not visit them. They could not visit us because of the lockdowns. And then the vaccines started to become available, and Pat and I were able to be vaccinated. And then a few months later, our children were able to be vaccinated. And the daughter who lived closest to us, her name is Lauren. I have three children, Kristen, Lauren, and Michael. And Lauren contacted us and said, this was April of 2021, so 4 years ago. And Lauren contacted us and said, Mom and Dad, now that we're vaccinated, they didn't have vaccination for the little children yet, but we can travel now. Can we come and see you on the school vacation? And Pat's heart grew 10 times. She was so happy that she was going to be able to see, her family again, her daughter, our son-in-law, and our two grandchildren. And so she was so excited about it. And they came to our home, and we had just a wonderful, wonderful week. We spent with our children and our grandchildren. And Pat ran around with the kids, the grandkids, and she just had a terrific week. And then at the end of the week, when it was time for the family to go home, because they had to go back to school the next week, when they were leaving, Pat was happy, but she said to me, my hip hurts. My hip hurts. And I said, you probably did too much running around. I said, Pat, we're in our 60s at that time. We're not young people anymore. You probably overdid it. Or maybe it's, the beginning of arthritis, or, maybe you're going to need a hip replacement one day. But take some Advil, take some anti-inflammatory, and maybe in a day or two you'll feel better. Well, in a day or two she didn't feel better. She felt worse. The pain got worse. And I said, well, let's make an appointment and go and see an orthopedic doctor and have your hip checked out. And she did, and the doctor sent her for an MRI, and the MRI showed an 8-centimeter lesion in her hip. So we knew it was cancer. We just didn't know what kind of cancer it was. So we got an appointment with an oncologist, a wonderful, caring man. And he looked at her MRI and he did some additional testing. And when we met with him, he said almost in a whisper, "You have stage 4 pancreatic cancer." And I knew what that meant. I'm not sure Pat knew exactly what that meant, but I knew what it meant. And he said, "I've given you the diagnosis. Do you want a prognosis? Do you want me to tell you how long I think you have to live?" And Pat immediately said, "No, I don't want to be cabined in my thinking. I don't want to know what you think. That's up to God. And whatever time God gives me, I'm going to make the best use of that time, because every day he gives me is a gift. And so I don't want to be thinking in my own mind, how much time may I have to live? That's up to God. He'll give me as much time as he thinks is the right time. And when it's my time, he'll welcome me home." And again, I was so moved and inspired by that. She was absolutely fearless. She lived every day the way that she said she was going to live it. I, on the other hand, wasn't so brave. I was afraid. I was afraid of the cancer. I was afraid of the effect that it was having on her and on me and on my family, and what was I going to do, and how would we go on? And so I was afraid of what would happen. But she took me on that journey, and she taught me that we shouldn't be afraid, that we can get through anything if we work together, if we love each other, and when it's our time, it's our time. But we shouldn't be afraid. And now I know that cancer can be cured. I know that's going to sound like sort of a dream, but I know from the research my team and many others are doing, there will be a day when that happens. There will be a day when that happens. And every day, every single day, I pray that I will be alive when that happens. So when that happens, however old I may be, whatever strength I have left, I will shout at the top of my lungs, "Pancreatic cancer, Pat has beaten you." Not for herself, but for everyone, for the community. And that's what I try to do every day, through my donations, through my work, through my leadership, to get one day closer, one step closer to that day when there will be a cure.
And we will send the prayers for that day to come. And with you, the dedication, with Pat and her courage, her strength to fight, to show that, human, we can do that, right? And with the works of amazing doctors at your clinic and around the world, I also believe that day will come. Okay?
Thank you very much. We will accept your prayers and the prayers of everyone in the audience who prays.
Yeah.
And even if you don't pray, send your best wishes, please.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I believe that this conversation, when we keep sharing and more people keep sharing this conversation, there will be more people to send the prayers, and one day, things will get into that way. So John, tell us, in 2023, after, I believe that you went through a very emotional stage after past with the 45 years being together. Then you decided to feel no more, to walk on the stage and share your story. And where did you find that motivation to went into that TED Talk and share the story redemption?
So, believe it or not, and this is the absolute truth, I did not know what a TED Talk was. I had never listened to a TED Talk. I had not heard of a TED Talk. My children, when I told them that I had been invited to give a TED Talk, said, "Dad, you do not know what a TED Talk is?" And I said, I don't. What happened was a person who sits on a board with me was one of the organizers of a TED event in Rhode Island. And he said to me, his name is Arnell Millhouse. And Arnell said to me, "John, I've heard you talk many times. I think you have something to share. I think you have ideas worth sharing. Would you consider giving a TED Talk? I'm helping to organize a TED conference." And I was honest. I said, "Arnell, I don't know what a TED Talk is." And he laughed and he said, "Well, I'll send you some TED Talks to look at, both sort of famous ones and then some from, TEDx in Providence. Very good talks, but maybe not as famous. And take a look at them and see if it's something that you think you would be willing to do." And I said, okay. And so I did look at them, and I saw some of, the most famous TED Talks. And I also saw some from TEDx Providence, and I said, I can do this. I can give a TED Talk. I came up with a topic that was not the topic that I actually gave. It was going to be another topic. I was going to talk about the work that I do for my foundation, the Pedo Opportunity Connection. I prepared the entire TED Talk. I thought it was really good. And they had a session where you disclose to the organizers what is it that you are going to give your TED Talk on. This was about a month before the talk was to be given. And the organizers said, "John, we're really sorry, but you can't give that TED Talk." I said, "Why? Why can't I give it? Is it not good?" And they said, "No, it's very good, but the Pedo Opportunity Connection is the sponsor of this event, and TED does not allow sort of advertising, and they will view this as an advertising talk for the foundation. So you cannot give this talk." Now, there was only 1 month left. I had worked on this talk for a long time. So I had to come up with another talk in just a few weeks. And I went to bed, and before I closed my eyes, I said, "God, give me some inspiration. What should I talk about?" And I was feeling, at that point in time, down, depressed, not only because of what was going on in my life. I went from, living in a very large home with a beautiful wife, to living by myself in a small apartment. I no longer had a home. And I was feeling, kind of sorry for myself. And just the word redemption just came to me and said, you can redeem yourself. You can redeem yourself. And I thought about someone else that had been a very, very good friend of mine who went through something horrible in his life, and how, in fact, he redeemed himself. And I decided that I would tell these stories, these two stories, of how he redeemed himself and how I hoped to redeem myself. And that became my first TEDx, called Redemption Stories. I went to give the talk, practice talk, and there were a few people who were also waiting to give their practice talks. And I watched them give theirs, and I thought they were good. And they said, "Do you mind if we stay and watch your talk?" And I said, "No, I would welcome it, and I would welcome any constructive criticism, any improvement." And so they began listening to my talk. And within just a few minutes, they started to cry. And then they continued to cry. And at the end of the talk, they rushed up to me, they hugged me, they kissed me, and they said, "That was an amazing talk, a beautiful talk." The organizers said, not my friend Ornell, the one person in charge, said, "I don't think you should give that talk either. It's too vulnerable. It'll be on YouTube. You want everybody in the world to know about all of these difficult things in your life?" And I said, "I actually do. Because it's who I am. I'm not ashamed of who I am. And if what I'm going through in my life can help others going through similar things in their lives, yes, I do want them to see it."
Wow.
And so I gave the talk Redemption Stories, and almost 26 million people have watched it.
Yeah.
It became the #1 TEDx talk in the world in 2023. And I have had thousands and thousands and thousands of people contact me. People make donations to the foundation to help, hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's been remarkable.
Wow.
And although, like I said, almost 26 million people have watched, if I could have helped one person go through and improve his or her life, that would have been worth it to me. And fortunately, I've been able to help many, 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 many more. And ultimately, that led to a request that I come back in 2025. They wanted to honor me, recognize me, because I had the #1 TED talk in the world in 2023. And they wanted me to give a second talk, which I did. That one is called "You Only Have One Life Until You Have Another." And it talks about how we live, we have one chronological life, but we can live very discrete lives within that one chronological life. And what can we do to help ensure we have enduring happiness? And I give my thoughts on that. And that's only been posted for about 10 days, and about 300,000 people have already watched it. So I'm hopeful that that talk will also help others.
It definitely will help many, many people, because what you are addressing there in that talk is the idea totally worth not only sharing, but applying, listening and applying in their lives, right? So, John, my wife and I, we've been on the quest to help people to improve a few things. First is to learn more about wisdom, so that we can transfer wisdom from different people to different people, from different culture to different cultures, to help people to realize the importance of that. And in your life, you look at your mother, who tell you to leverage on your strength. Your father, when you got drafted, and he told you to continue education regardless, and let's see what you're going after, right? You had an opportunity to meet your beautiful wife. Pat, during an interview, is a wisdom from somewhere that letting you two met on that day, and living with her through 45 years with that superwoman, right? I call her the superwoman. To see the strength and courage inside of that beautiful path to help transform the world and change the world. So, in your own definition of wisdom, John, how do you define it?
So I define wisdom as not something above us, but within us. So many people think they don't have a skill set to be wise. They're not super well educated. They're not great in math or philosophy or science or physics. Wisdom comes from here. within. And it is understanding who we are, understanding our place in the universe, and understanding, this is irrespective of your religion, whatever your faith may be, but I am convinced that we are all connected. We are connected. What you want for your family in Vietnam, what someone in the Middle East wants for his or her family, what someone in Canada wants for his or her family, what I have wanted for my family, I guarantee you it's the same thing. You want your family to be happy. You want your family to be safe. You want your family to be loved. You want them to be successful in whatever endeavors they come up with. That's the human spirit. Wisdom is learning from our mistakes, not judging ourselves too harshly because we make mistakes, because we're human. We are going to make mistakes. We are going to sin. We are going to do things we shouldn't do. But we can learn from that. We can, through wisdom, say, I'm going to be better. I'm going to improve. I'm going to help others. And my belief is that if you, me, anyone wants enduring happiness, when we think about what makes us happy, it will always, always, always involve others, never alone. If you are truly happy, it might be happy with your spouse. It might be happy with your mom and dad. It might be happy with your best friend. It might be happy with your children. But it's sharing lives. It's sharing something. It's sharing what we know. It's sharing our wisdom. It's sharing our love. It's creating that happiness. So for me, wisdom is something that is in us that we just have to uncover. We have to unbury it sometime. We all have it in us, irrespective of what our education may be.
So John, how can we unearth it within ourselves? What can we do?
I think what we do is that we remain open. We don't have closed minds. We aren't judgmental. We are accepting. We are thoughtful. We are kind. I know a lot of this sounds very idealistic, but it's something that I 100% believe in. I believe that if we give ourselves the chance to be the people we're supposed to be, that we don't worry about everything. We don't stress about everything. We don't judge everything, including other people. And we treat ourselves and others with respect. Then I do believe the goodness within, the strength within, the wisdom that is within, it will come forth. It will come out of its burial place.
And if the people can practice your advices, can use it, and can share it, can unite it, see how beautiful our world would be with that collective wisdom from everybody around the world, right?
And I say this because I mean it and I believe it.
Me too.
I believe that most people, the vast, vast, vast majority of people are good. I believe it. And I believe most people, you could take them out of whatever country they're in and put them somewhere else, but in their heart, they want the same things. They want the same things. They want to love and be loved. They want to have a family. They want to have respect. They want to have an opportunity. They want to work. They want to make a difference. I believe the vast majority of people all feel the same way. We just have to make sure that we do everything we can to give people that opportunity and not hold them down, and certainly not crush them in their attempt to improve.
Beautiful. The second thing that my wife and I went on the quest over the past 3.5 years to help people to improve their ability to think. You mentioned the word think. I think in here, and I counted here for many times in this conversation. Yes, yes. And we believe that our thinking capability has been diminishing for so many reasons, so many impacts around us, so many noises. So every opportunity like this is an opportunity for us to ask the secret of thinking from our guests on the show, so that those practical ideas and the secrets will be able to share for other people who listen to this conversation. And if they can listen, reflect, and apply, and change, and do something with that would help them to improve their ability to think. So the question for you, John, is how have you been growing your ability to think over the years?
I learned a long time ago, there's a saying, and the saying is that if everyone is thinking alike, no one is thinking. And there's a lot of truth to that, that just don't accept everything. When I say think, I mean it in the sense of analysis. And is it right? Does it make sense? Can it be improved? What things can be done to make yourself better, your family better, your life better, your state better, your community better, your place of employment better? Don't be shy about sharing your views. Because what you may think, well, I don't know if I should actually say that. What if it doesn't make a lot of sense? Well, if it doesn't make a lot of sense, okay, you've at least expressed your thought. And if someone who is hearing it is respectful, they will still listen to it, and then there'll be a discussion. But I've met people who thought they didn't have any good ideas, and when they were actually coaxed to give their thoughts and ideas, some of the best ideas I've ever had. I'll tell you this one quick story. Again, during the pandemic, when we decided, the Pedo Opportunity Connection decided that it was going to first form and then start helping these communities. We had focus groups in the communities to try to learn what is it that community really wants. Because there are different communities. What do they actually want? There was a Laotian community, Hispanic community, an African American community, a Native American community, and they all had different wants and needs for their communities and for their cultures. And rather than assume you know what they want, ask and find out, what does that community actually want and need? And I went to all of those meetings, and it struck me that there were no young people there. I mean, teenagers, high school, they just weren't there. And I said to the leaders of the community, why aren't the young people here? And they said, oh, they don't care. They're not engaged. They're just on social media. They don't care. I said, I don't believe that. I do not believe that. I believe that they do care. Maybe they're not being given an opportunity to express their views, to have their voices heard, but I believe they care. And I said, I'm going to come up with a way to test this. And so we came up with an idea. It's called the Transform Rhode Island Scholarship. And what it is we ask the students this question. It was open to all the high school students in our state. This was the question. If you had $1 million, how would you use that money to improve the lives in your community? What would you do if you had $1 million? And the students could write an essay, they could do a PowerPoint, they could do a video, they could do whatever they wanted, and they could apply. And there were monetary scholarships If you win, you got a scholarship money, ranging from $25,000, which is a lot, to 5 to 10 winners. But the really, really great thing is the winner, the person who came up with the best idea of how to improve the community if they had $1 million, is we take $1 million of our money and we implement that idea. So the student's idea becomes a reality in the community. And we have now done this for 4 years. This is our 4th year. And each year, a young student comes up with an idea that will help transform his or her community, and we take $1 million and make that idea into a reality. So those students said, this changed our lives. We really didn't believe that we could do something like this. And even if the student didn't win any of the scholarships, the fact that they went forward and gave us their ideas, it made them feel creative. It made them feel, I am having my voice heard by someone. And it has uplifted the entire community.
Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful to see ideas in action when you try to do something different, right? John, travel time with me for the last time in this last question, okay?
Yes.
And I've been noting this question down along the way when I on the ride home, and I was hesitating to ask, but when we have this beautiful conversation, I would not hesitate to ask, okay? If you now travel to the bed with Pat, when you told her back then that you will remarry her for a million times in this life, million lives, right? And over again. And you have the chance to tell her about the stories that you talk at TEDx, okay? What would Pat tell you about her feelings of that success?
I hope what Pat would say, first of all, is that if the roles had ever been reversed, I know she would be caring for me the way I tried to care for her. I know she would choose me again 1,000,000 times. For those in your audience that needed some context to it, in the last days again in hospice, Pat asked me if God gave me a new life, if I had the opportunity to live my life again, would you still choose me, even knowing this is the way that it was going to end? And she said, if the answer is yes, you would choose me again, that would make me happy. And I said to her, if God gave me 1,000,000 lives, I would choose you 1,000,000 times, over and over and over again. And as I said in that talk, I believe that whether you call the place heaven or you call the place paradise, whatever it is, I view it as a forever place where we are together forever in happiness. And I told Pat, no matter how many lives I ever have, one day we will be together forever in that place.
Wow. John, every time I heard this, it's so touching for me. I really hope I'm there to give you a big hug and many big kisses. And I pray to Lord that one day we're going to be able to see you in person. And not only me, my family will be there to give you big hugs and kisses, okay?
Well, I'm a big believer in hugs and kisses. I truly am. We need contact. We need connection. And some of it is physical. There's nothing wrong with that.
For now, give a big hug virtually first.
Virtual. Well, I thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I try to make new friends every day, every week, and I am so happy that I now have you as a friend.
Wow, thank you very much. It's my honor to have you as my newest friend in my life. Okay, and many more lives if God give me that opportunity to meet you again, to be your friends again. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you have a wonderful day, and we look forward to talk again soon.
All right. May God bless you and your family.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.